Pecuniary interest or conflict of interest to disclose? No, thank you. We're picking up the agenda at item 8. We have already had our closed session. So the first couple of items, we have two delegations or presentations to be made. I'm going to invite the presenters to come forward in the order that they are on the agenda. Just remind you, if I may, that we have a fairly heavy agenda this evening. So we could ask you, if possible, to keep your presentation to the minimum. The maximum is 10 minutes. And then councillors will have an opportunity to ask you questions at the end of your presentation. So Larry Samus is up first. Welcome, Larry. You're going to talk to us about benthic monitoring, right?
Okay, I'm going to use this to spread my nose out a little. Not that I have 10 minutes worth of it. Anyway, benthic monitoring. First of all, this is Dennis Morris. I'd like to thank him for all the work he did in organizing this and finding out about it and bringing it to our attention. There are a couple of people I should introduce. John Wesley can't be here. He's the vice chair of our group, Conservation Association, but he will be the chair next year at this time, actually in summer, so he's replacing me. Too bad he wasn't here. Most of you met him, and Joe, I'm sure you met him on the golf course. And of course, Dennis is involved in a number of different environmental associations in the Parry Sound area, including Georgian Bay Biosphere. Locally, he does the water quality testing on the lakes. Last year, he works with the Rock and Bend Club, so we've done a number of lakes in the area, and most of them are pretty well similar to Whitestone. So, Barb Martinson's here. She's our treasurer, and we have another gentleman with us too, Bruce Hill. Anyway, benthic monitoring. It's a 3-year study that will be done by the Georgian Bay Biosphere. And what it is, I'm sure you've read already the articles that we put. There were 3 sort of bundles together. But basically what it is looking at the number of macroorganisms, they call them. They're not, in macro, when they say that, it means it's not microscopic. It's slightly bigger than microscopic. We used to do the testing for the water fleas and so on the lake, and the equipment that I had, you had to go down the bottom and scoop up, and it was just amazing. The net was maybe this long and started to go this big around and narrow it down. But as it drained out, it was amazing the number of tiny organisms that you would never think of that are in the lake. We do our Dennis does now, but we do the chemical analysis of the oxygen, phosphates, nitrates, and temperature, etc., pH. And it tells us the water quality is good. But little microorganisms, they tell us whether that's correct or not. And that's why I want to do that. If there's stress, some other stress, and there aren't as many as there should be, okay, there's something wrong, and we need to look at that. So it's for the benefit of the community, the benefit of the people on the lake, and of course, from there, the commercial development and so on around, they all depend on tourism in that area. So the better the water quality is, the more money comes into the municipality. So this study also aligns with a number of municipalities drafted strategic plans, the one they had in last July, strategic objectives number 4, environmental stewardship. That's all outlined in the open letter there. Basically is to monitor and promote water quality. So we're looking for funding, rather not necessarily a donation. Could be either way, I guess. We're looking for funding, thinking that the municipality might want to fund this study. It's now the breakdown is in the again in that letter. I think it's on the second page. It's costing, but it's about $700 to do the actual monitoring. To do the final reports, another $300. So we're talking about, I guess it's $1,050 a year, and the Georgian Bay Biosphere is suggesting that we do it for 3 years, so we get a, you know, because who knows, things change, and so what happens? You get a better look at things over a longer period of time. I'll refer to your donation policy as well when I'm talking here. There's a couple of sentences there that certainly apply to what we're doing. And in order, I'll quote one, in order to enhance the life and social well-being of the municipality of Whitestone community, approximately $3,300 per year will be included in the municipality's annual budget. So we're looking at using maybe a third of that to do this. This study would affect all property owners, and I guess I've already suggested that. So basically the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve will send out 2 biologists to look at for this project, to supervise the collection of data and then put it all together in a report. It would also involve some of our local students as well, if they're create an interest in becoming part of environmental, maybe continuing on in their education towards things that, you know, environmental issues. So we would, WCA would support the transportation and sort of organizing that end of it, and we're hoping that the council would sort of foot the bill, as you so speak. So for a 3-year study, we're talking about $3,000, a little over $3,000. Now it's broken down further in the letter that we wrote, the application. I'm not going to go over everything in detail because you can all read, and it's all in there. So don't waste your time. Now, if there are questions, I'll try to answer. If I can, I'm sure Dennis can. So.
Thank you, Larry. Questions from council?
Sure. Thanks, Larry, for coming. Do you have other lakes that you think this would be appropriate for as well? I know you do water testing in more than just Whitestone Lake. I'm just thinking in terms of the entire municipality, if there are other lakes that had a high population on them that we should be concerned about as well. Do you see in the future that if we do one and then kind of move on and check some of the other lakes as well? Do you have a list kind of off the top of your head that it would be appropriate for as well as other than Whitestone?
Can you answer that, Dennis?
Certainly the intent is not just to do one lake. This is a pilot to start, to see what we get, deliverables. Are we getting good value for this before we try to promote it to other lakes? But there certainly is, you know, many property owners from many lakes that would all say, me too. We just want to get the ball rolling, get it started somewhere. And this being one of the larger lakes in our municipality, we thought we'd start here. But as far as prioritizing a list, that would be something. But certainly there's interest in other lakes, I know that. But it's just the funding part is, you know, just making it all work.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, Larry, and good presentation. And I'm supportive of your efforts.
So I'm having trouble here.
I'm sorry. I'm supportive of your efforts and will support the project. I, of course, go back at least 12 or 13 years with the WCA and them coming forward. What I've always been used to on projects like this, and I know it's in our official plan, and you know we're going to support this type of venture, and I do support it. But a lot of times it's been on a cost-sharing type agreement, right? Where the lake itself, whether it's Whitestone or Walvish Cache or anyone else, put up some of the funds, and then the municipality puts up the rest of the funds. So I think there's got to be some skin in the game from people from Whitestone or whatever. I know in our lake association, for instance, we give, or used to give, $5 a year, I thought, to the WCA from all the members. Is that still occurring?
No.
No, it doesn't occur anymore. Okay. So what I would suggest, I guess my question of you is, would you, because you're referring to the donation policy, would you consider, a cost-sharing type of arrangement? And I would help with, for instance, going back to the road associations who used to give that $5 and reinstituting it, at least in our case, which is, I think, 60 members or so who could, chip in $300 or $200 or whatever annually to the association so that you could afford to do and cost share through that. So that way.
Yeah, we need to get sort of on this quickly because Georgian Bay, if they're already doing in quite a few other areas.
Yeah.
And so we want to get our names in there fairly quickly and, so that they can put us on their list.
So let me rephrase it. Do you have funds in your budget that might be able to help assist us in a cost sharing? Because as I look at it, I look at all the various lakes, Wawashkash and others that come forward and say, I'm doing testing. And so, the ideal model, I think, is some form of cost sharing. I don't know what the form is, but are you willing to at least look at that?
Okay. Well, our thoughts were, if the municipality funds it, we'll look after organizing it and getting it going. I'm sure that could be negotiable, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
We do have funds available, but they're already we don't have a lot coming in per year now. We've got a bankroll that is very substantial, but we've got other commitments we want to spend it on. And so if you can help us out with this, this would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, could I say something? With the lakes having associations, a lot of the lakes don't have associations either. So just the bigger lakes do, but the
Yeah.
smaller ones really don't. So there's no one
Can I just add one more behind it? There's some misconception. Whitestone Conservation Association isn't about Whitestone Lake. It's about the municipality. So we're funding already all the lake chemical water monitoring ourselves. We have skin in the game with this project as well because we are going to be providing manpower and supervision of this, or at least some of that already. And this isn't, I don't see this as being a once-off thing, as more and more lakes want to do the same thing. I agree, we can't come to the municipality and ask for all of them to do that. But some lakes, as you know, Joe, have stronger associations than others, that you'd likely be able to find some sort of cost sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, I guess my comment was more along that same line. It would seem to me that there are several different methods of water quality, aquatic biological testing, lake testing. This is just one more example of probably a good one that's being kind of tried and tested and hopefully will prove. Do you see this moving into other program areas? I know, Dennis, you'd like to see that for sure. And,
Do you want me to
and
answer?
hopefully we'd see requests coming forward for other studies, like are we overpopulated, doing a complete study on some certain lakes or sections of lakes, or it just seems like there's a whole big area out there that we're just sort of floating along, skirting by.
Yeah.
Dennis, you can answer, and then we'll move into your presentation.
Because it does segue right into it, actually. So, but to answer your question, Joe, like the district municipality of Muskoka, they've been doing benthic monitoring for 17 years. This isn't good. The science has been out there for a long time. We're kind of late in the game, getting on board with this, really. In my estimation, the value is really here. For $1,000 a year to get this study done for this lake, the size of Whitestone, like, that's a bargain. Anyway. Anyway, that's, does that answer your question, Joan? I'm going to get into the rest of it a little.
Yeah, I'll let you proceed with
Maybe
the,
a full suite of testing, but this was one that just came up. This is one that came up before.
Well, thank you very much, Larry, and I'm sure we'll give some consideration to that in the budget, which we'll be getting to soon.
Esteemed municipality of Whitestone council members, thank you very much for giving me finally the opportunity to speak to you about this development proposal that happened. And really the long and the short of it is there's a whole calamity of errors that have happened that I see it. The more I looked into it, the more things I found that were maybe questionable or didn't seem right in my mind. So you'll see a whole plethora of those items as I went down, and if you don't have that original proposal, none of this makes sense to you at all. So you should as well. But my last letter on December 4th, I spoke very heavily on the fish habitat thing. And I did include in your package, Council, Mr. Mayor, 3 pictures. But I wanted to kind of illustrate in a way what happens with black and white pictures, because when there's a whole bunch of shading with colors and that, when you see the black and white, can you make any sense of that at all? Probably not at all. When you're making decisions about waterfront shoreline, fish habitat, these colors meant everything. Yet in your proposals, you saw almost nothing. It's hard to determine. I went to a printing press and made some good copies. Could I approach council and give you each a copy of 3 pages, color copy, to include? You have the black and whites. Am I allowed to do that? Give you this?
Sure, go ahead.
Can I do that?
Yes.
I want to give you 1 copy each. What I'd like to do in my few minutes here is just ask you to take each one of those pages from the very front one, start on the left, lay it out. I don't have one for you.
It's okay.
I have one for myself. Lay that first one out on the left. What that one was, that was the MNRF Type 1 fish habitat and all the environmental protected designated areas. And the consultant went and dug this up to see, because all of this land around this waterfront area was designated either fish habitat 1 or environmental protected. So they got the mapping and they got it all coded out. It's nice, see the color, but please notice that a lot of the shoreline on these 3 proposed lots, almost all of it, except for one piece, has some kind of either EP or environmentally protected or fish habitat 1. Okay, so lay out the next page when the biologist there came, and they just started to. The next one removes all the fish habitat spawning areas completely. Just takes them right out of there, almost 100% of it. And now it just says it's just type 1 habitat in the middle. And then based on that, page 3, they say here's all the proposed areas you can make in the shoreline because it's not designated. But go back to the first page and lay it beside page 3. Almost all that shoreline was designated EP or fish habitat 1, meaning you can't have any area for docks. Your own official operating plan says 15 meters from any EP fish habitat 1 areas for shoreline. At hazard a guess, there isn't really any 15 meters in the 1 lot. The retained lot probably has a little bit at the north end. You might be able to squeeze a little bit in lot number 2, but that's right in the middle of the channel. But that's it. Your own operating plan says that when there is a discrepancy between the original map and the zoning maps of these things that M&R gave you, go ahead and hire a consultant environmentalist to ground truth it. Yeah, they came up with their assessment. But it also talks about when there's discrepancies, you go back to MNRF and get them to map it again, determine whether or not there it is. I never saw that process happen in this development. So having said all that, we can't really, we can't recover spilled milk really too much. But what we can do going forward is trying to make better decisions, better informed decisions, and using better science. Waterfront property is a very valuable resource in this municipality, and it shouldn't be taken lightly when it comes to development. You should try to use the best practices. And when there is science out there, like I mentioned in my report, we have water quality available done by WCA. We're not using it at all in the assessment of whether or not we're at carrying capacity of the lake. So my concern is really, in all of this, is what's happening with future generations. We're really not concerned too much about the water quality and what the future about water quality is going to be like, because we really don't know since 1991, really the true picture of what that water quality is like. How can we ensure ourselves that the ecosystem's going to be intact, fisheries are going to be fine, and people that want to come here to enjoy pristine, to live, work, and play, can come here with a healthy system? So that's why I get into all those recommendations at the end, where I talk about doing more studies. Total phosphorus would be a good example. I've seen some really good practices out there since I started investigating this. And environmental lake stewardship councils, subcommittees of councils have been formed to try to address this science, to give you guys better decision making. I've seen other municipalities, even every time somebody develops a new lot, they've got a handbook, Sustainable Living Practices for Shoreline Property Owners. What a sweet little book to start giving new people when they come here. There's lots of best practices out here. We have it in our operating plan to do these things. We just need the will to make it happen. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Questions for Dennis? Councillor McEwen.
Dennis, would you, I know it's a long shot, but would you suspect that there are several of these locations that we've maybe been a little bit too casual about? Like, and in terms of...
I would hazard a guess to say yes. I don't look into each and every one of them. But, and part of that is when I talk about a calamity errors, we don't do a very good job in this municipality of even posting when proposals for development are going to happen. We don't post them on our website like we used to. When this one came out, it was discovered that it was only posted to the nearby affected property owners. Nearby, that was it. So I even live in this part of the lake. I didn't know anything about it until it came to the council meeting.
Other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will move on now to item 9. There are some more planning, there are a couple of planning matters. I guess what we'll do first is we have reports from our planner, John Jackson, on these. So we'll start with 9.1, which is an application for from the Kings in Parker's Bay on Wawashkesh for a one-lot severance. John, do you want to comment on this first, or?
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. This is a proposal that would create one new front lot on Wawashkesh from a somewhat irregular large parcel, approximately 40 acres in size, where the property has two separate frontages, and the owners are hoping to separate those, currently physically separated, but legally joined parcels. So it's been examined in terms of the context of the planning instruments, and it's being recommended for council to support the consent to the planning board with what I would call a typical set of conditions. So unless there are any questions that I should address, I don't see this being an extraordinarily complicated application. There were no submissions from a rather extensive circulation to neighbors for this application.
Could you define extensive circulation? I did not see it on the Wabash Conservation Association's website, so.
I've got a list here, Your Worship. I'm going to say about 50 property owners.
So it would include most of the people who are in Parker's Bay, can I assume? Or?
Yes.
There are also, there's at least one building somewhere on that piece of property, and I don't see it. At least, it may not, it may not be on the parts that we're talking about here, maybe on, maybe closer to the edge. Do you know where it is? There's no, or do you know for sure that there are no buildings on it to start with?
There's a small cabin on the south portion of Parker's Bay. I'm looking at the air photo. I'm not sure if MPAC showed anything. It does, the impact shows a small cottage at this location. And the north portion is the past Rosella Lane.
Questions from councilors?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson, I see there are a couple of environmentally sensitive areas, as indicated on the one illustration there. Should we be a little more cognizant of being specific that no docks, for instance, be positioned within that certain distance of, I forget how many meters it is, but there's a specified distance, like 30 meters of an EP for fish-sensitive areas? Is there any concern in that regard on this?
There are considerable lengths of what I'll call clean frontage. I'd like to take advantage of the fact that the CBO is here. I'm not sure whether there is an applied clearance from the edge of an EP zone.
I believe it's is it 10 meters
So there
in any structure.
30 feet. Should we be specifying that in our conditions?
Well, the parent bylaw would have that
We
requirement
have that
built into it.
when they come to,
Obtain a building permit.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Mayor Comrie was getting at. I know it's not required by the Planning Act, but I think at some point in the last 2 or 3 years, we had reached some sort of agreement that when lot development on Wabash was occurring, that out of courtesy, we would include the Conservation Authority and their website in that, so that they would put it on the website, and therefore Mayor Comrie could say, I saw it up there. So if we didn't do that in this case, or my recollections are wrong, please correct me, but in future, I think when you're going to have a specific lot creation on that lake, that's a tremendous vehicle to make sure that the lake knows about it. It goes beyond the plan and, 200 yards or whatever it is.
Yeah, you're quite correct, through your worship, that was the protocol. I'm just combing over this list of 50 names, I don't see the association, which if it's not there, it should have been there. But I concur that may have been a hiccup, but there was extensive circulation because of the size of this property.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Further on that, so are we to assume now that we will be notifying cottage associations or road associations or groups on lakes?
Well, we generally do, whether or not the lake has an association, but whether it's Whitestone or Blue Stack or Washcash, it makes sense to have as much information. Washcash had a protocol where they put the actual advertisement on their website. I don't know if the other associations have a website, Your Worship, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm thinking of I'm on Dunchurch Estates Road. They've got a fairly active roads group and cottage association, whatever the terminology is for it. They would certainly notify the members, I would expect, if they're informed. Just as an example.
I would say that makes an abundance of sense to do that. So going forward, we could circulate any association within the jurisdiction of the consent to them, and they can decide how they want to treat that.
I'm still having a little bit of difficulty exactly seeing how this is going to be severed. What it looks like to me is it's the old Edgewood Inn property. There used to be an inn, a resort kind of place on there. And it's mostly gone, all except for the buildings that used to be there are gone except for a cabin maybe or so. So it's a pretty substantial piece of property, but it isn't clear to me how it's from the material that's in front of us, where the actual division is.
Could I circulate the copy of the larger sketch, Your Worship? I may assist. It's a little bit better in terms of the right passes from this end of the council table. You'll see the red line defines the proposed boundaries. There is a reduced version in the report, but it looks as though we don't have the larger.
So, Mr. Jackson, in essence, they're taking one lot in the middle of this. Is that correct? And leaving a property on both sides?
Yes. There are several lots between the two sections that will ultimately result from this transaction. So the south portion will have 155 meters or about 500 feet of frontage towards the interior part of Parkers Bay. And then the north will have actually two frontages on a large peninsula at the north end of the property, which I gather is where the old resort was.
No, the old resort was approximately where it says retained lands, right?
Oh, in the
It
large
was,
acre.
yes, it was back towards the back of the bay. It was, if you went down Edgewood Road, it ran into it, basically. I guess the other thing is that there are, when I'm looking at this, okay, there are the lots that have been created on Whitestone Bay, for example, the ones that are where you see Rosellen Lane goes up there. That's so there already are some pieces that I guess I don't know if they were part of the original property or not, but there are some other, it puzzles me that the parcel that, or the piece that is called proposed lot is a very irregular shape, mostly because it goes around some other cottage properties that are already there. And you know, it's not clear to me where somebody would actually build on it. Would they build facing south, or would they build facing north, or would they?
It's a good question. I think they could do either, Your Worship, either north or south, depending on probably the most ideal building location.
I don't know. My feeling about this is that there's a lot of unanswered questions about it. But anyway, sorry. No, you need to hold that. That's it's a blow up of the actual survey drawing. Anyway, are there other? We're not at a resolution yet. Are there other items, other questions about this particular thing or comments? Anybody has? Okay. I will. Okay, sorry. We're just at the planning stage. Let's go to the second one. The second one is another consent application from Boyd Hamilton, and once again, I'll ask our planner to introduce this.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an application where Mr. Hamilton has been a long time resident in the community and has used the land for pasture purposes, is interested in essentially retiring from agricultural practice, but wants to live on the property, and he's conveying the pasture land to an adjoining farm use, so that effectively what you see today and what you see tomorrow is going to be the same. So there really is no fundamental change in terms of the uses on the land. So it's a straightforward rural consent that would comply with our policies, and Mr. Hamilton has a number of entrances recognized by MTO along 520, so there's no issue with respect to any clearances from the property. And Mr. Hamilton's here if you have any questions.
So this is the house that is sort of a kitty corner from Maple Island Store, correct?
Yeah, straight right across, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, farmhouse and barn and all that. I'm keeping 10.5 acres there, so that way I keep horses, and I'm planning to have maybe 1 or 2 cattle there, that's it.
And the farm property behind you comes down behind you, right down to the road further down, right?
Yes,
Because
yes. It goes right up to Whitestone Lake Road, and it butts up against Johnny Botto's property, next farm in the road.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I know what we're talking about. So you're then proposing to put this property for sale? Is that
Yes.
Is that the intent? Questions from councilors? Nothing? Everybody okay? Well, that was that was easy. So we have.
I have one.
Sorry.
So once this is severed, someone would be able to put a building on that lot, right? On a newly created separate lot or not?
Yes, they would, Councilor.
Yes. And if the immediate next door neighbor bought it, would that tend to merge with the immediate next door neighbor, or would they be separate?
I don't think the intention is to have them merge. I think if...
So they wouldn't automatically merge if it were the next door neighbor?
correct.
Okay.
And maybe we could ask Mr. Hamilton, as I understand the background, the neighboring property owner, Mr. Bonner, wants to continue to farm it.
Yeah, there's cattle there.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So he is using it now?
Yes.
I thought I saw his cattle there, yeah.
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 He raises cattle all the way around it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go
I hate
ahead.
to labor this one, but you have effectively part of 200-acre properties or the width of 2 lots.
Yeah, it's
Are they all one common merged at this time?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so you're just severing off those,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, anything else? Okay, let's consider some resolutions then for these. The first one was go back to the one on Washkash. The proposed resolution is that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone has no objection to the approval of consent number B30/2019W-A as applied for by Philip Russell and Marie Ellen King, subject to the following conditions. Receiving 911 addressing, first condition, receiving 911 addressing for the new waterfront lot. 2, entering into a Section 5126 agreement to incorporate the relevant water quality protection measures outlined in the Municipality of Whitestone's official plan. 3, ensuring that the retained and severed lots have registered rights of way to the lots. 4, payment of a parkland dedication fee satisfactory to the municipality. And 5, payment of any applicable fees. Is someone willing to move that motion? Councillor Gorham Matthews moves. Seconder. Seconded by Councillor Woods. Discussion. Councillor Lamb.
I'd like to ask the mayor, I know you had some concerns about untidy things in this thing, what specifically it is, because I don't get it in my mind. And secondly, I thought we were just creating one lot. How many lots are being created? Just one? Because I heard lots. Didn't you read out lots or something? Creation of new lots, or did I hear that wrong?
Well, it says ensuring that the retained and severed lots, but that's the
Okay.
two. There is a retained piece, so that's where
So
the
it's
lots
only
came from.
creating
Yeah.
one.
There's only one new waterfront lot.
Okay,
That's, you're
so
correct.
my question is, what are the untidy things that you feel
What-
might make us?
Well, it's
tend
just
this or
that,
something?
I guess it's just that the intent in terms of what they would be planning to do with it subsequently is unclear. And normally speaking, when we get applications, like the second one we just had, it's pretty, we have it straight in our minds what it is that they're actually going to do with it when they're finished. I mean, I can't find any technical reason. I'm just curious as to what their game plan is, but I don't. Maybe that doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Can I call the question? Oh, Councilor McEwen, did you?
Sorry to call the question, sorry.
Oh, you're just saying yes?
I'm saying
Oh,
yes.
all right. I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion before you. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right. And on to number 9.2, and once again, I'll read you the motion. That the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone has no objection to the approval of consent number B33/2019W-A as applied for by Boyd Hamilton, subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, receiving 911 addressing for the new rural lot. 2, payment of a parkland dedication fee, and 3, payment of any applicable fees. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
Can I just ask a question?
You may.
Do we not normally come out of the committee of the whole and then vote on these things? I don't ever remember us voting within the committee of the whole. on
Well, the interesting thing is we didn't go into the committee in the whole, and I kind of was, I was kind of noticing that as we went by, but.
Oh, okay, well, that's a good
we-
reason to not come out of it.
We didn't go into it, so, and it's not on my agenda, so
Well, it should have been.
it should have been, I guess, to allow
Okay.
the, we're taking,
You don't
we're
have
being
to-
generous with allowing people to
You don't have to come out of
speak, but
something we
yeah.
weren't in then. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Again, I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this
I'll move.
consent. Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Any discussion on this one? Those in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Do you need me to stay anymore, or?
No, we don't, but thank you for,
don't find this
thank you for
interesting?
coming and answering our questions.
Sitting over there, I'm gonna bring it back, don't forget it. Got home, had a quick sandwich down here.
Okay, well, thank you. So that brings us to our consent agenda. And normally what we do with the consent agenda is we look at the items, which include regular council meeting minutes for the meeting of December 9th, 2019, Board of Management for Belvedere Heights minutes for October 23rd, a memo related to the costs of the 2019 Bunny Trail Culvert project that we did, which is really there for information, and the list of unfinished business items that are on page 4. Are you content to leave those on the consent agenda? No discussion required? All right then, can I have a motion that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives and or approves the items contained in the consent agenda dated January 21st, 2019? A mover. You moving, Councillor Woods? Seconded by Councillor Gorham Matthews. There's not really any discussion. Those in favor? Thank you. Consent agenda is approved. That brings us to accounts payable, item 12. I'll ask for a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby approves accounts payable in the amount of $188,361.99 and payroll in the amount of $37,085.94 for payment.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Gorham Matthews. Is there any discussion or any that you wish to inquire of with staff? That sounds like a no.
Nope.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Staff reports. This brings us back to the topic that we were on at the last meeting, which is a report from our working road superintendent on the implementation of landfill and waste management options.
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
You may.
the copy of this report that was in your agenda package didn't print well, so we have given you another printed copy that has the shaded areas and a few other things that you can just see and look at as you.
But there's no changes to it.
No changes, it's just a little easier to read.
Okay.
Now, am I not correct in saying that we dealt with some of these last time around? So tell us, if you don't mind, which are the ones that we dealt with that we don't need to come back to further?
Your Worship, in my notes, I think the discussion ended at about item 6, construction and demolition waste, with a great reference from council on how we want to proceed.
But did we give you direction with respect to items 1 to 5?
I believe you did, and that's what's in under the recommendation for implementation. I think that reflects the discussion of council and the direction the council was leaning for us to proceed with implementation on those first 5 items.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lamb.
I'd like to quickly go over them, particularly number 3. That's a big topic, and I don't think we've concluded everything on that at the last meeting at all. When I read my notes and went through this, and maybe people on council would disagree, but I was okay with number 1 on the tires and implementing that, this spring with proper communication and that sort of thing, so I didn't have an issue there. Number 2 on the scrap metal, again, I have no problem from my standpoint. I don't know what others did with number 2. I think we have to have a big discussion on recycling, because I don't think that's over, and I have some concerns, not with respect to whether we should move towards recycling, because I think that we should, but it's the timing of it and the process of how we get there that I don't agree with at all. I think to say, come April 1st, we're going to implement recycling in this community and give them a soft landing for a few months and then away we go. And at the same time that I can speak a lot on number 3, so that wasn't done from my standpoint. I don't know whether it was with other councils, so I'd like to talk on number 3. Number 4, you're coming back to us, so that's okay. Appliances, there's no implementation at this time. I don't know what I guess all you said was that appliances and electronics would all be at North or at York Street, right? Did we make the decision that?
That was, through you, Your Worship, that was my recommendation. Through the discussion of council, it became clear to me that wasn't palatable to council. And that's why the recommendation that proceeds from my notes in any event is not to implement that at this time.
Okay, if that's the way council feels on it.
Okay, well, let me go back to your original suggestion. Let's just go very, very quickly down the list to make sure that we're not jumping over something. What you see in the shaded areas are to the right are the ones that we discussed previously. So, number 1, tires. Everybody good with tires? Is that a go-ahead? I don't see any opposition to that. Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't bring my notes from the last meeting, but that's my recollection anyway. Scrap metal, we're going to do an RFP and so on, and that's still, but everyone's okay to go ahead with that, eh? Is that correct? All right. Number 3, the suggestion was that we go to clear bags as of April 1st, and that we notify residents. And there is some information about here about clear bags and so on. Let's have some discussion on this one.
Want me to go over?
No, well,
Councilor
you had the concern with it, so why don't you
Okay.
just
And
tell
again,
us what it was?
I don't want people to read that I'm against mandatory recycling and for it, but I don't want to cause chaos in this community by saying 6 weeks from now, here, away we go, when I think it would have enormous ramifications. And I think we just have to look at a scaled-in program that takes a lot longer, that has a better communication vehicle than sticking it on our website and maybe putting it in a newspaper and having people arrive and say, there you go. And I think there's education for our workforce on this whole thing that I don't think we've done yet. I don't think they're prepared to pay policemen. We don't pay them enough to be the policemen at the landfill site. And, you know, when it comes to mandatory recycling, I would put to you that most people in this community have mandatory recycling. But I would like to see, and I'm sure there's a few, who doesn't put the odd can from a soup can or an odd bottle from something that they don't want to wash out and put it in their garbage, okay? There may only be one of them in there, or two of them in that whole garbage thing, but they recycle everything else, okay? And if you're going to go to the landfill site with a clear bag and someone's going to say, aha, look at that can, that's not supposed to be in there, it's supposed to be over there. So you go do what? Take it out? Are the picnic tables there, or you go home, or we're rejecting it, or there's a whole bunch of stuff here that we haven't covered, in my opinion, right? Including the communication. We as a community have got a communication consultant hired to review our communication policies and how we effectively communicate with people. And right in the midst of that, before recommendations come forward, we're going to take an enormous task like this and just do it in 6 weeks. I don't think it can be done. I think it will cause havoc. I'm also concerned. I called the bylaw enforcement officer today and said, you know, how do we enforce this? What do you know about it? Well, quite frankly, he knew very little about this. He hasn't been consulted on this particular thing. How are we ever going to set something like this up when we have no idea how the heck we're going to enforce it? He said to me, first of all, his opinion, it's very, very difficult to enforce. Okay? So unless we have a whole strategy to recycling, what are you going to have? Fines? You're going to take people to court? Everything else we have defined in bylaws. We're sort of going to forget about bylaws. We've got, I'm sure, a landfill site bylaw that we better be bringing and redoing and doing it right so that people know and communicating to people so it's done right and they have many months' notice that it's coming. Okay, we're skipping over all that part, and to me, we're just jumping to the end and saying, "Way to go!" I'm not going to vote for it that way, and I know there's going to be a lot of problems. First of all, there's going to be a lot of people come up and say, "I got 200 garbage bags here." You know, what am I supposed to do? Throw them all out and get clear garbage bags from now on? Starting, and you didn't even tell me, and that's what most people are going to say. You didn't even tell me. I had no idea this was coming. And and there's other things too I've got here. Got recruitment. You know, we're now looking for a public works director, and it's public, right? We're looking, Brian's been good enough to be here a year and a half or 2 years. We're going to thrust this on some new public works director, and we don't even know that what his thoughts are on it, or her thoughts are on it, right? So here, we just decided that you get handed that, okay? So I think there's too many inconsistencies. Like, I think we should drive to implement this maybe January 1st or you know, very early, have an education, have a proper communication, have a proper bylaw set in place, have proper enforcement, have proper fines, let people know, tell all the roads associations and do it right and proper. To do it this way, in my opinion, and I could go into other details, is not the right way to go. I just think it's an enormous clump, and again, that doesn't mean that recycling isn't important to me or to this community, but we've waited all these years, and to just do it and say 6 weeks from now we're going to start it with, it'll be panic in my opinion. And what we'll do is you'll end up with people dropping all the garbage outside the gates, okay? If we're going to do this, we better get cameras at our landfill sites. Okay, I've been arguing for the last 2 or 3 years that we should have cameras up there for enforcement. right? How are you going to know when a landfill lieutenant gets into an argument with someone over a clear bag that was even up there? It's one word against another and all those, at least some evidence, but there's a proper camera system set up, at least acknowledges that the person was up there, whoever is doing whatever thing. So there's a lot more thought that has to go into this, in my opinion, than has been put into it so far. So that's
Okay,
my thought
thank
on
you.
it.
Other comments?
Yeah, further to Mr. Lamb, I'm concerned also about the educating of staff and having responsible staff who have the authority. I think we've got some serious work to do on that. Just today, I was comparing neighbors and how they handle, it was recycling generally, I guess, what I was looking at. And I sent a copy of what is in blue boxes, what is not in blue boxes to our CAO. She probably hasn't even seen it, she was away all day. It's a very illustrative and it's quite descriptive on what you put in blue boxes, therefore it goes into the two separate bins that we have, one being the plastics cans and the other being the fiber. I think we're pretty much right on target with the specific items and the way it's listed in there. This was from Magneto actually. But we have to get that to our people. And these are questions I get asked. I just got asked at Agricultural Society the other night, what the heck do I put in my blue box? What plastics can go in? What should not go in? And I think this Magneto little illustrative do's and don'ts is quite good. So there's stuff out there. But we should get this to all our ratepayers as, I think that is totally the intention. And this is not to downplay what's already been thought about by senior staff, because they do have a two-stage implementation set out in the one page here on clear bags. Starting in April, and full implementation would be September. So it's not like we only have the 6 weeks. And April the 1st isn't very far away though, that's kind of scary. But the educational part of it and having the staff and knowing what they can do and informing the public, not sure we can do it by April the 1st. Maybe we can be enlightened on that. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask CAO.
Well, I think our staff have heard some of these comments, if you want to respond. And
Yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying. I have I've had conversations with our communications consultant on how we implement, whether it's clear guides or no tie-ins or, the construction demolition debris, that all has to be communicated. And I'm also working with a sub-consultant through our communications consultant whose specialty is waste management. And if council may remember, there was money in the capital budget for an education plan for waste management, and we just didn't get to it. So we're working on something that looks very similar to, I did see what Councillor McEwen sent me today, so we're looking at those options. And it's linked to improvements on our website and simply educating people with what gets recycled in this community. And it's very similar to other communities, but sometimes people aren't sure if something's a container or if it's cardboard. So there's some things happening in the background in terms of communication and education.
Through you, Your Worship, I
Go ahead.
think the idea and the notion is to roll in more softly than perhaps is being read from this text. I don't think there was any intention to have hard enforcement on April 1st. Have people using clear bags and going into that with time. That does take education of staff. It does take more staff at the landfills. And it does take some further promotion over time. And we were thinking more in terms of orders, in terms of that migration, as opposed to a hard date for enforcement right out of the gate, because as Councilor Lamb said, our landfill staff are not bylaw enforcement officers. And so we want them to be able to continue to talk to residents and encourage residents in the right direction. And I think I had also discussed at one point that we might even buy clear plastic bags to give folks, to encourage them to use that step in moving forward home recycling, but a hard enforcement date. That certainly wasn't in my thinking or in the discussions that either Michelle and I have had or that I've had discussed.
Councillor Gorham Matthews, were you?
Yeah, I know it feels like we're moving fast, but I think it's important to start it for this summer because we're missing an opportunity. I don't know if anybody that goes to the landfill site on a regular basis, like this past summer, a lot of stuff went into the landfill, like it really was busy, and I think we're missing an opportunity. If we wait another year, like we've had studies for quite a few years now saying that the landfill sites are filling up, so I think it's an opportunity to start moving forward. And everyone that I've bounced this idea off of has been actually interested in it, and you know, they've heard other communities that have embraced it, and you know, are looking forward to being able to do their part. Not everybody's going to embrace it, but I think the majority of the people seem to be interested in doing something positive for the landfill.
Thank you. I guess what I kind of thought was going to happen with this one was that we were going to have some sort of a, you know, like a little project plan for implementation of this, because I think, you know, obviously it's not something that you can just turn a switch on and say, as of this day, there are a whole lot of different things that have to happen, and they have to happen in a certain order, and we have to figure out who's going to do them, and maybe, you know, I guess I was sort of expecting the rollout plan, if I can call it that, to come back to council, and that's maybe why, you know, why we're having a little bit of difficulty with this. I wouldn't want to say, well, let's not do anything until, you know, the end of the summer season, but I mean, I guess we should identify all the different items. If we're going to, we've got to supply information to people. How are we going to do that? When's it going to go out? If we're going to hire the students for the summer so that there are additional people at the landfill sites to help, when are they going to be there? And you know, because there's that, you know, there's timing attached to that, and there's some uncertainty. And I'm not just talking about us approving the budget. I'm talking about whether you get them or not, whether you're able to hire them or not. And you know, then there's all these questions around what do you do? What will the policy be for people who either, you know, either don't comply because they weren't paying attention to the communications, or refuse to comply, you know, and we at least have to have answers to those things. Otherwise, we're putting our staff in a difficult situation. So I wonder if I can suggest that we do a bit more work on getting some of these details laid out, at least the things that have to happen in the near time frame, and what are the things that are being left to further down the road, so that council can look at that and get some comfort that we're on track to make something happen, and we know what's going to happen. Yes, Councillor Woods.
Just one more thing about the recycling with our two separate bins that we have. If we're going to be doing the scrap metal, not right now to make money, we shouldn't have any cans whatsoever in any of our compactors anymore. That should go to our scrap metal. Because those aluminum cans and those tin cans go through shred pile. That makes us money. And our aluminum cans, you make money with them. So if we're going to do the scrap metal to make money, like we talked about before, streamlining it, there shouldn't be any tin cans whatsoever or lids going in those compactors. It should be plastics and fibers.
I guess the question I have in response to that: are we going to get are we going to get somebody to segregate the cans?
If we're doing metal, that's the metal end. That's where recycling goes. If not, you're spending money getting those bins changed all the time.
Well, no,
right?
I know what you're
You know what I
saying,
mean?
but
And the more tin that goes in it, the more metal that goes in it that we're not making money on. If we're trying to make money for scrap, we're paying for that to be taken away, right?
But the big recycling places separate the aluminum from the tin by air, using air, right? They don't have a person sitting there saying, that looks like aluminum.
No, I'm saying when you come in, if you
Yeah.
come in,
Yeah.
that's where plastics go, and that's where papers go. Metal goes with the metal.
Oh, so you're saying put all the metal together and
All the metal goes with
let
the metal.
the,
If
let
we're
the
gonna try and make money with metal,
recycler. Okay.
that should be where metal would go.
Any comment on that, Brian? No? Okay. Yes.
I did a little research on that today to see specifically what would go into the non-fiber with the plastic. And invariably, they're calling for cans, including paint cans, as long as they're clean and dry, in either the metal bin or in our scrap, or in our compactor. They can go with the plastics. But I certainly hear what Mr. Woods is saying for down the road if we want to get into segregation of and accumulating cans, as some landfills apparently do have a separate location where you can put aluminum cans in particular, and they do accumulate, and they make money for, in addition to the beer cans, but pop cans of the aluminum cans. So there are several processes out there, of course. But,
45 to 65 cents a pound for clean aluminum.
Yeah.
and they-
No.
And looking at staff numbers, invariably, there is at least 2 staffers at all times that the gates are open in the dumps, from what I could find. Sometime, in the summer times, 3. Like, you can't expect a person to be at 3 or 4 different locations in this landfill at the same time when it gets busy, to assist and to direct, even when we do get staffed up.
Okay, in the interest, Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I agree with a lot that has been said, and I didn't want to infer that we should, just delay this thing till next year. I have no problem at all giving up clear plastic bags starting in April or May. I have no problem us communicating that we're moving towards mandatory recycling within the next 6 to 8 months, and implementing in a soft way those sorts of things, right? And I think we can do it. I think after the summer, when people get used to it, most people are going to get used to it. I don't know how they're going to take it. I guess they'll end up taking their big soup like blubber. I guess I've got lots of cans. I guess I've got to go through the plastic thing and put cans in the third blue box or something. I don't know. But I want staff to make sure that they look through the regulatory stuff too, because there are bylaws that need to be put in place. And I know that there are bylaws now that we have that frustrate the heck out of the bylaw officer and us because they become unenforceable. Okay, they're not enforceable. So once people know they're not enforceable, those people, and the ones we're really trying to get here, quite frankly, are the ones that come to the landfill site and say, the heck with you, and just throw everything in. That's the people we're trying to get, right? And the people we're going to affect most is not necessarily those people, because they may still come in and say, the heck with you, and throw it in. And what are the landfill attendants going to do? Well, we can't force it. Somebody did that. Well, we're going to borrow them from the landfill site. Well, you can't go to court and have that stand up. It's got to be a plan that other communities do it. They have to have an enforcement plan. We need to do research on that portion of it so that we bring it forward, so that we know that we can properly enforce whatever it is that we want. And so that's all I ask. So we can do it in a soft way, but don't say, September 1st or October 1st or Thanksgiving, we're going to do it. We'll do it eventually, but that may be January, it could be Thanksgiving. We'll see how it goes over 2 or 3 months. We also don't have any definitive costs on what it's going to cost us extra to do this, right? There's no number that I've ever seen as a budgetary number to say that's going to cost you 10 grand or 15 grand or 20 grand or 2 grand, right? And to me, we should be dealing somewhat in numbers. And again, I don't think the numbers will be strong enough to say, oh, we don't want to recycle or whatever. But I don't want to penalize the people that do 95% of recycling for the sake of 5% that don't, and that we may not be able to change anyway, right? Because we can't. So we've got to be able to button that thing down. We've got to be able to say, no, you take your bag home, and you can't dump it in here, and then make sure they don't dump it right outside the gate, and we're out there with our staff cleaning it up. So all those things are things that I'm concerned about, as much as I am the regulatory part. So we just need to do more work on this to bring it forward than just tick it off like we have wanted to, in my opinion.
Okay, well, thank you. Can we, with respect to number 3, can we request a staff to produce a rollout plan, including costs for our next meeting, and we'll figure out what we can get done in the short run. Number 4 was controlled access. It says the table says no implementation at this time. There's no suggestion to proceed with that. That's identifying the people who come to the website and getting rid of the ones who aren't residents of Whitestone. Well, sorry, I was going to get Brian or the CAO to respond first, and then to what I just said, and then.
Through you, Your Worship, all of my notes said the council didn't have an appetite for this at this time, and I had the sense that what you were looking for was for us to review the implementation options and revamp so that there's a better plan to come forward to council for this implementation.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure that I'm just trying to get council to say, yeah, that is in fact what we said. Is that, are you okay with that conclusion for now? So once again, we'll get something back from staff at some point about here's a plan for implementing controlled access and dealing with unidentified users. Councillor McEwen.
Mr. Mayor, it's very common in most municipalities. Some are very stringent. Some have limits on the dollar value of what number of bags and all this kind of stuff, but get as complicated as you want. But the information certainly is out there. We had someone in a position to do some research for us, which is what we're asking for, future date in 2020.
Okay. Well, all right. It sounds like that's the consensus. The next one was appliances containing Freon and electronics, and again, there was no action on that one. No immediate change. We would discuss it further. Councillor Gore Matthews.
Yeah, I was the one that kind of spoke out about this one last time, but actually, when I went back and asked some of the people in the community, they said that used to be the way it was years ago, is that you couldn't take those items to Alt Road. They had to come to York, and I don't know at what point that got changed, but for the most part, there was a lot of negative feedback about doing that. So,
Just one thing to that. If I load my garbage out at my dad's place, and I get rid of my fridge, and I come all the way here, I'm also going to dump all my garbage here. I'm not going to dump it at Alt Road, right? So it's going to be more garbage going in this hole. This one's getting a lot smaller, a lot faster than Alt's. That was my biggest argument to it. So you get a new fridge and a new stove, you load them up, you're going to take all your garbage, all your recycling with you. If you got to bring it all the way here, drop it off, all your garbage is going to go here too, right?
Yeah. No, valid point.
I guess the question is how many refrigerators are dumped at Alts each year? I don't disagree with what you're saying, but if there's only 5 of them, then
I can't give you an accurate count on that. I don't know if that statistics ever been kept. I know what's historically been done is work staff with when there's appliances or electronics out there. primarily electronics, and they would stop and pick them up and bring them to York for the independent work. So the objective here was to reduce your staff, the effort to cost of double handling, having to make the trip all the way out to Alls to pick up some things to bring them into York. And my sense was that most people, at some point or another, they come in from Alls this way at some point. Anyway, they don't always just go down Glen Street. So it was more of an efficiency objective here than anything else was the thought behind that recommendation.
Okay, so let's leave it the way we have it at the moment. I'm going to try and wrap this up in about 5 minutes, so we're going to go through the next few that I think we had some that I thought we had some consensus on. So the next one is construction and demolition waste. And the suggested recommendation here is eliminate the acceptance of all commercial construction and demolition waste commencing April 1st, 2020. So that's a very short date. Would again require some communication. Discussion about that? You good with that? Who wants to go first? Councillor Gorham Matthews, I'll take the far end here.
I was just going to say that I did some research on this, and a lot of the smaller municipalities don't accept this kind of waste. McDougall's really set up for it. I think for most of the commercial businesses, they can factor in this additional expense into their job quotes, and, with enough notice. Seems to be the way that all the other smaller municipalities are moving.
Okay, Councillor Ryan.
You're here. That's exactly what I was going to say. And there's nothing that frustrates a lot of people, including me, more than going in and seeing a complete house dumped into a landfill site, right? And you go, whoa, and there's several of them, or large decks, or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're able to cost that into their jobs and simply take them. There is alternatives. Take it to McDougall, and they'll accept it. You have to pay over there, I suspect, right? So I'm all for that. Whether it's April 1st or May 24th, I'll leave that up to staff. You've got to be able to write a letter to all the contractors, right, informing them of this so that they know in advance. So again, you don't have a confrontation at the landfill site of them showing up and saying, we're not taking that load, right? So.
Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I've been at the dump 2 or 3 times and taken time to observe. They've done an excellent job of moving material in onto the actual, boundary property inside the fence and such. But we're limiting ourselves very quickly as to where we can dump brush, for instance, construction and materials which would be of a household nature. I think we have to go farther than just with the contractors on this and restrict it to no dumping of, say, docks and decks and boats. And I'm not sure what we do with the brush part of it. I can see that dump being completely loaded with items right out to the compactors. If you think back to May 24 last year, it was bedlam in there, the amount of material that went in, and these guys were trying to throw it aside and move it aside, and there'd be 20 vehicles coming in, and 2 or 3 of them had trailers behind them. For the life of me, I don't see how you could navigate through that kind of traffic and back trailers out into that corner now, unless there's another specific total location on the land site surface that we can put things. But like right now, you can't put the brush where we did last year. It has to be back right down that little narrow thing beside the fence. I can hardly do it without a trailer, let alone with a trailer behind me So I don't know if somebody can enlighten me on where we're going to put this material and how we're going to handle it if we keep letting more than very basic household stuff come into that dump. It almost has to be all or nothing on the household side. The construction side, that's another whole big deal. But the amount that comes in, and I see it coming out my road and up the highway on the dump days, and it is big time. Trailers loaded, tied 10 feet high with brush and you name it, all kinds of things going up there.
Well, we haven't dealt with brush yet, it's coming, but this particular one, can I remind you, is to eliminate the acceptance of all commercial construction and demolition waste.
We're going to have a separate heading then for the household stuff, yard stuff? Or we're going to ignore the yard stuff?
Well, no, wait, it's coming under a separate heading. This is just commercial, we're just talking about commercial, saying,
Under a separate heading?
Commercial business, not having.
I just want to make sure we don't.
so they can't, I mean, they
It's the
can't.
very next line, John.
Okay.
So, all right, so I'm taking that one to go, from the sound of it. We're gonna come to the motion in a minute. I'm just trying to get something here that we can, that will likely pass. The next one had to do with boats. And the proposal, there's,
No. Well, excuse me, I'm sorry.
what?
Well, there's more that Councilor McEwen was just bringing up on the construction and demolition waste. The next one is to raise the rate for demolition waste to $200 per pickup or trailer load. And I think that's what he's getting at, right? People show up at the landfill site with a trailer load of baseboards and quarter round and drywall or whatever, because they're doing a small project, and they bring the back of their pickup truck with that waste to the landfill site. Right now, it's being accepted, right? And the question is, of staff, you're suggesting that they get one time a year to do that, and that they pay $200 per pickup or trailer load. What do they pay now? If I show up with the back of my, I don't have a truck, but if I had a back of a truck with quarter round and baseboards and other miscellaneous small wood projects, not a deck or a dock or whatever, what do I pay now to dump that? Anything?
I think typically you're looking at, I think it's $35 that we're paying for that small quantity.
Okay, so you're suggesting that $35, that A, it'd only be allowed once a year and it becomes $200?
That's correct.
Okay, so.
Or alternatively, you can't dump that sort of stuff here, you go to McDougal and do it?
Through you, Your Worship, the objective of that high ceiling is to make it more expensive for them to keep dumping it here than taking it to McDougal, which is a landfill, as was said earlier, is actually built to receive this material.
So what happens if someone, I don't want to make it difficult, but if someone has, an old vacuum cleaner, or an old whatever, small, not appliance, but, and they put it in the trunk and bring it over and, say, it kind of still works, and they put it in that area next to where it goes, and then it either gets thrown in. What happens with something like that? Do we say we don't accept that anymore? Or do we say, yeah, that can come in, but if you put it in a trailer, it can't come in? Like, I don't know, I'm just unclear as to how, again, what the definition of all this stuff is, right? Because we certainly haven't addressed that part, Mr. Mayor. That's in number 6, right? And I think that's what Councilor McEwen's getting at.
Mr. Mayor? That's part of it. Demolition, construction materials, totally. I can't fathom where we're going to put it. It has to go in with the disposable garbage. That's the only place we could put it, unless somehow, by magic, you can get it out and put it off the end. I don't know how you're going to do that.
Through you, Your Worship, the objective with the snow fence that was put up at York Street this past fall was to delineate that area. We really have to stop pushing material over that face, because the toe of that waste is already at the fence line. And so what we had to do was we had to go down there and pull all that material back up over the fence. I accept that it's a difficult spot to back into, and even more so on a busy day. And In the summertime, it can be even busier than the 10 or 20 people on the site at a time. I don't have a good solution other than to say we need to at least apply best efforts to keep that separate from the putrescible waste. Your issue at York Street, in my opinion, is the airspace and what is the value of that airspace and what is the value of that remaining airspace. Is it simply what it costs us to put a cubic meter of waste in there? Or is it what is it going to cost you to replace that cubic meter? And that cost to replace that cubic meter is far, far higher than the cost of filling the cubic meter. So you're coming to a point where some really difficult decisions have got to be made by council in terms of York Street site if you're going to have a longer life. And you're going to get more years out of that site, and that includes some things that have got to be simply removed, in my opinion. At the rate you're going, that forecast of 12 years on that site is impractical. So when you reach that point of everything has to be containerized and shipped short haul or long haul somewhere else, that cost per ton and that cost per cubic meter goes high fast.
Okay, so just to focus in on the issue here, because we're running out of time, the motion that I have in front of me, which I appreciate you don't see, it's just a suggested motion, but it only talks about commercial construction waste. It doesn't talk about I don't know if I guess the opposite is domestic construction waste, right? But so there is no proposal has come back from staff to implement the $200, for the pickup load or trailer load of the domestic construction waste, we'll call it.
So here, Your Worship, I guess that was my method to sidestep in a manner that we can at least accomplish something.
Yeah.
And if we can at least get all the commercial waste out of there, and ideally all large loads of waste, of C&D out of there, you're going to accomplish a very significant first step. How you get to the end can be another step for council to decide how do we define a small quantity? How do we define an acceptable amount from a household? How are we going to regulate and control that it's coming from a household, not a contractor? Those are additional steps that have got to be made, measured, and put in place by council in the future. But if we can at least start by getting rid of all the commercial waste that's going in there, because it remains my belief that the most significant amount of waste from outside of Whitestone that's going into your landfill is the commercial C&D waste. That's the largest quantity from what I see. And so if we can get a clamp on that,
Okay.
at least it's a step in the right direction and we can roll from there.
All right, so I wonder if we could agree to that approach and come back with this particular item. Another one, just so you think that we're putting everything off to the future. There is one more recommendation which had to do with boats, and we did talk about boats. It's number 7 in the memo. The suggestion is implement a protocol that requires all boats to be stripped of mechanical seats, windshields, controls, etc., leaving only the bare hull, again, commencing April 1st, 2020. So, it's basically to reject boats other than strip metal hulls. And I think the only other option is to reject boats entirely. So, and I don't know what, I guess you can take them to McDougall, right?
That would be my motion.
But okay, I'll let Brian respond to that, and then we'll take questions on this one, and then I'm gonna give you a motion.
The motive behind still accepting strip metal hulls is that since you've accepted that we're going to move in the direction of metal being an income stream, a stripped aluminum hull has some value in that tonnage.
Oh, absolutely.
Fiberglass, the other stuff, they can take it to McDougal or wherever else they want to get rid of it. But we'll take a hull, if they'll take the effort to strip it out and it's metal, we'll take it and put it in the scrap metal stream.
But this motion that I have in front of me doesn't actually, the word metal is not. It says implement a protocol that requires all boats to be stripped of mechanical seats, windshields, controls, etc. So, but that doesn't say it can't be fiberglass boat, and you don't want the fiberglass boat.
No, so that's my area, Your Worship, in that wording, because in the original discussion document, you'll see that what we talked about was specifically to receive only stripped metal hulls. Reject all of them.
Okay, so we can change the motion if that's what the council wants. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, and I agree with that. What do we do with the hulls now? Are they shipped out, or we bury them at the landfill site?
When we do through you, Your Worship, when we do the cover on a regular basis and distribution of the waste on the site, they take the hulls and they dig a hole and kind of pound it down. But if you go around the back side, you'll see several valves protruding from the waste mass.
Well, if we can make money on metal hulls, then we should accept those. And in my opinion, if you have a 20-foot fiberglass boat, you take it to McDougal and implement it in April or May or whatever.
Okay. I'm seeing heads nodding around the table, so can I try a motion and see if I can get a mover and seconder?
Just on this, or?
No, I've got the things that we've discussed so far. Right?
Well, the only other one that I think they're suggesting something be done on, or they're saying no, but I think something should be done on, is number 10, brush.
Okay, you want to?
Yeah, you know, the other 9 and, I don't think 8 and 9. I think the donation items, if the people aren't picking up their donation items, then tell them to pick their bin up. We're not a storage space for their donation items, so I agree with that. Site management, I don't know, I don't really even understand number 9, but there's no implementation at this time. The brush, receive brush only at Alds Road site. Right now, I think we still send that once a year, you get a free load going to the.
Yeah.
And I think that's what causes in May, for instance, everybody bringing all their brush. And a lot of people, of course, burn their brush or burn their wood or whatever. And so there was the suggestion that I think the fire chief made at one point, that we divert all this to perhaps the pit on Farley's Road and put, say, the people.
Because we couldn't hear it.
Okay, I just have to turn it up because it's getting cold.
There was a suggestion, Brian,
We gotta pull our
that
mics
there was a
out.
suggestion by the fire chief that we look into saying if you've got brush and you don't want to burn it, you get one load a year or whatever. I don't care about that, whether they get that or not, but you take it to the pit and where we can have some sort of controlled burn over there and not, you know, because right now we can't burn at York Street, which is what we did. So last year we filled that place up with brush, right? And then we didn't chip it. And that's also what contributed to this filling up so quickly, right? And I guess the idea that we had last year was you were going to get a chipper in and chip it all up and do something, but it didn't. It ended up in the landfill site. And I don't want to see that happen again this year. So otherwise it's going to fill up again. So why can't we, or can we, do as the fire chief suggested and take it all over to Farley's Road, where it will be accumulated, and between the fire chief and others, we can have a controlled burn once or twice a year and deal with it over there. Is that possible? Because that was a suggestion.
Through you, Your Worship, there's certainly a resource requirement for that. And to be frank, I would leave that to your new manager to see what kind of plan and resourcing he can manage to be able to do that, and what resources will be available to help in terms of control or putting it out at needed periods for in between burns, etc.
Okay, so why did you, excuse me if I could just go on, why did you say we don't implement anything? Because I think what's going to happen in the summer and through the spring is that thing's going to be loaded with people who don't burn. They're just going to, their big trailers are all full of brush, and it's all going to accumulate, and it's going to fill up like mad. And we're going to, be filling our landfill site up with that instead of garbage. So is it best to take that to Alls? I mean, I don't mind saying to people, if you want to take your brush and you don't want to burn it properly, then, take it up to Alls. I don't think it's any different, quite frankly, than if you've got a refrigerator and you want to bring it down to York. You're helping everybody. I don't see that as a problem, because the life at Alls is, 35 years or something, right? But I think we need to look for a long-term solution to this, because you don't want to fill Alls up with brush either, right? But certainly in the short term, I don't find that acceptable this year. Because up until last year, we used to burn. Like, we'd put all that brush in and then we'd burn, it wouldn't fill the landfill site up, right? Now we've taken the berm out and can't do that anymore, and I don't find this solution doing nothing right. I think we've got to tackle that one this year, so I don't know how others feel on it. Because space-wise, it really takes up a lot of space.
Okay, I'll let Brian respond, and then we'll test the question.
Through you, Your Worship, that was actually the first statement in here was to see brush only at all road. That could be an interim measure until some other plan for disposal and handling can be put in place that is satisfactory and effective.
Right. Okay, yes?
Before we leave the brush thing and go to all the questions, or all the possible resolutions, I broached this one with McKellar because I know they had a brush issue, and they break it into two categories: brush, stumps, and larger material. You burn that and it burns for 3 days, trying to get rid of the bulky, heavy wood. McKellar apparently now do have a pit someplace that they can put brush in, but they don't have ministry approval to burn it. As soon as you start burning, you're putting smoke in the air, you're putting smoke into communities, and the community could be one family or one house. Mm-hmm. So that could even be an issue down where our property is, for instance, if that's what we're looking at. Quinn's house is right there. There are 2 or 3 new houses in that side road now. Ryan's just over. You can probably see the fire from your house. So I like what Brian just said personally. If we could use Alds as a short term and investigate long term, maybe that will be long term. I don't know.
Okay, well, let's try this as an interim measure and see. So here's what I have at the moment, and I'll see if we can get a mover and seconder. That the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives memorandum, it's entitled Follow-Up from November 19, 2019, the staff report regarding implementation of landfill and waste management options, and that the Council hereby endorses the implementation of the following changes at Municipality of Whitestone landfill sites. Item number 1, there's 5 of them. Eliminate the acceptance of tires as of April 1st, 2020. Second one, implement a revenue protocol for scrap metal. Item number 3, and I'm going to take out the one that was there that had to do with the clear bags, right? And I'm going to replace it with the following. Receive brush, I'll just put receive brush only. Sorry, receive brush at Alds Road only. And reject material from commercial enterprises, and reject brush from commercial enterprises, because that was part of the original recommendation. And reject brush. Sorry, I'm writing this down. From commercial enterprises. So that's number 3. which deals with the number 10 item on the list. Item 4, eliminate the acceptance of all commercial construction and demolition waste commencing April 1st, 2020. By the way, the receive brush should also be commencing April 2020, correct?
If I was going to make a comment at the end, because we're talking about
Yeah.
April 1st. Following through what Councillor Land said, maybe we should consider May 1st or June 1st and give us a little bit of time. It'll go in the newsletter and give people some time to prepare for this. And,
Are you talking for all of these items then?
I think that whatever we're going to implement, we should have one single date that we're going to, and clear bags aside, we're going to do a roll-up plan, but everything else should be one date, and we can hit a couple of newsletters if you want to
Okay.
extend the date to maybe June 1st, whatever works.
My caution is,
That's going to be
the
interesting.
longer that you wait, right? If people are going to rip down a cottage and build a new cottage, they're not likely to do it in April, there's still, but you give them till May or June 1st, and by golly, once they know that, they're going to make sure that house is ripped down in May in our landfill site, right? So May 1st might not be too bad, but I think once you go to June, and I think the brush you can just do. If someone shows up with a big load of brush, you tell them, no, it's not that we don't accept it, you just have to go down the highway a little bit and go over to Ald's Road. And if they say, I don't think that's right, say, well, then go complain to the mayor. No, I'm only kidding.
The deputy mayor.
So I think that can be implemented April 1st, but just be careful how much you push the mandatory stuff out, because I think, because the people coming, particularly the cottagers who come back up, and if they're clearing their lots and getting brush and all that stuff up, they're doing it in April because they don't want to be out there in the bugs in May cleaning, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that shows up in early May at the landfill site. And so if you make it June 1st, it'll all be there. Like 3/4 will be there for the So make it,
okay.
I vote for May, but I wouldn't make it June 1st.
Councilor Gorham Matthews.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lamb that we don't want to get into May 2-4 where everybody comes up
Yep,
and they know
yep.
this is coming down the line and they'll have every boat they have on their property and dump and they're like, oh, we got to get going before all this comes through. So,
Well-
if we're going to move it to May 1st, I think that's good. But I
We
would want
can
to
do
miss it
April
over the
1st.
weekend.
I'm just trying to find a balance
Yeah.
between communications and.
Well, would you be okay with May 1st if we just if we just put at the top, effective May 1st? Or we can put effective May 1st or as soon as possible if you want. I mean, I think the idea is we want to get it done as quickly as possible.
We can aim for April 1st if council is fine with that. It will go in the newsletter. We're holding our newsletter, honestly,
Yeah,
to understand what council wanted to implement.
yeah.
Some of these are easy to, no tires. The clear bag, I agree, you need to think of a roll-up plan and get something to do a little more robust.
Okay, well, I'm hearing sort of, we'll say effective May 1st. How about that? Give people a little bit of a break. All right, so the final one is implement a protocol, sorry. No, I'm gonna change this, number 512, to simply reject boats other than strip metal hulls. Other than stripped metal hulls. Okay, so let me just read this to you one more time. And this is part 2 of this. The first one was to receive the report. Part 2 is that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby endorse the implementation of the following changes at municipal landfill sites, effective May 1st. May 1st, I better say May 1st, 2020, right? Otherwise. Okay. Number 1, eliminate the acceptance of tires. Number 2, implement a revenue protocol for scrap metal. Number 3, receive brush at Ald's Road site only. And reject brush from commercial